Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Gospel Recap and Monday Message. Content for this episode comes from worship on November 22nd, Christ the King Sunday. Jesus compares himself to a king who moves among his subjects to see how he is treated. What is done for the least of those who belong to his family is truly done for him. Our gospel comes from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. Jesus said to the disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these, who are members of my family, you did it to me.' Then he will say to those at his left hand, 'You that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not give me clothing, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me.' Then they also will answer, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?' Then he will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me.' And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. This is the gospel of the Lord."
So if you noticed, your sins have not been absolved because I did not absolve you from your sins. Not that I have that power or authority, but I do. There was kind of method in my madness, not just forgetfulness, although there's sometimes that happens, as you are well aware of if you've been worshiping here any period of time. But the reason I kind of wanted to delay is because I honestly believe that sometimes it becomes very easy for us to misunderstand what the gospel is talking about and to worry about which are we? Are we sheep or are we goats? And so hear these words. Beloved, we are God's children. And Jesus, our beloved, opens the door to us. Through Jesus, we are forgiven. By Jesus, we are welcomed. In Jesus, we are called to rejoice. Let us live in the promises prepared for us from the foundation of the world. We don't have to worry about are we sheep or goats. God loves the world so much that God gave God's only Son. So why does Jesus use this example? Why is Jesus talking about this? So Jesus, in Matthew's gospel, has been telling his disciples that he's going to go away from them, that they're going to be left alone, that there's no longer going to be Jesus to lean on. And he's told them parables about, in effect, how they should live, how they should prepare themselves for his leaving. And I want to read two verses from Matthew 24 and Matthew 25, which is right before the gospel for today. In Matthew 24, verse 42 says this, "Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming." And then in Matthew 25, verse 13, "Keep awake, therefore, for you know not neither the day nor the hour." And that's setting the stage for this parable of the sheep and the goats. It starts out with Jesus saying the Son of Man will come back again sometime. When? We don't know. And so how are we to be prepared for this coming? So Jesus sets up an example, and I have to admit that I know nothing about sheep or goats. And so I could not make any comment on the validity of these statements Jesus makes. But fortunately, there's something that was not around when I was first starting in the ministry, and it's called Google. And you can look things up fairly easily. And I discovered that in the before the first century, but in the time when Jesus was living, it was very common for sheep and goats to be herded together. There was no difference between the two of them. I mean, they looked different, obviously, but both were raised for the same purpose. Both provided their hides for clothing, for carrying. They made bags. They made clothing out of the goat's hide and the lamb's wool. They were both used for eating. They both provided milk. They both provided sustenance. They were herded together. There was no difference. And so why did Jesus use this example? Well, Jesus is talking to his disciples about a time when all the nations will be gathered together, and he's saying there will then be this division. And what's the division all about? It's, I think, Jesus' warning about the difference between, and I'm going to use two words that are philosophical, but I'm not going to use them in terms of philosophy. The difference between being and becoming. To be something means that's what you are. You don't have to think about it. It's become your nature, your way of living, your way of doing things. So I use this example. I'm semi-ambidextrous. What does that mean? It means I use my right hand for something and my left hand for other things. I can't use my right hand and my left hand interchangeably. That's why an ambidextrous person can use them interchangeably. I can't do that. I use one way and I use one the other. I don't have to think about it. I eat with my left hand. I don't have to stop to think when I pick up a fork, I'm left-handed. I'm really weird when it comes to playing baseball. I bat left-handed. I cannot bat right-handed. My brain doesn't function that way. So which hand do I use to throw a baseball and catch a baseball? I catch a baseball in my left hand, and I throw the baseball in my right hand. Again, I don't have to stop to think about it. When I pick up a glove, I don't do this anymore, but when I used to pick up a glove, I would pick it up with my left hand, and I wouldn't have to stop to think, which hand do I put it in? When I would throw the ball, I wouldn't have to stop to think, how do I throw the ball? When I go up to bat, I don't have to stop to think, which side of the plate do I get on? And so I have these things that are part of me that I don't have to stop to think about. But there's one thing that was weird. When I went to school, I was left-handed writing. I picked up the pencil left-handed and I started writing left-handed. For some reason, my teacher did not like that and broke me of that habit. But it didn't come naturally, and it didn't come easily. And it took about a month of her doing things with my left hand to the point where I write right-handed now. But it was not my nature to begin with. I had to learn something different. It was forced upon me, but I had to learn something different. So that now, there are times when I'll try to pick up pick up a pen or pencil left-handed, it does not work. What's really weird, I use chopsticks either-handed. But why am I talking about this? One is about being, and one is about becoming. I think Jesus uses these examples to his disciples to tell them, and to the people coming afterwards, to tell them, look, you're going to be living in a world of people who are going to want you to be a certain way. In the Roman Empire, there were demands upon people to live a certain way. So Jesus said to his disciples, look, this is what I want you to be. I want you to be people who live in such a way that when you see a need, you don't stop to think about, can I fill that need? You fill the need. And you don't do it with the understanding that you're going to get a reward for doing it. We already have the reward. God loves the world so much that God sent God's Son into the world, that through the Son the world might have life and have it abundantly. Not a little part of the world, not a little piece of the world, not a certain grouping of people, but the whole of people. So Jesus is saying to his disciples, be always living in such a way that you're filled with joy and hope and peace, and you know love because you are loved. And when you know love, you share love. And I will close with this example. I get as much kick, if not more, out of watching my kids and my grandkids open their Christmas presents or their birthday presents as I do. I maybe get more joy than I do when I get something. And my kids, hello kids, if you're watching, always ask me what I want for Christmas. And my answer to them is world peace. Because I want them to give me something and I don't know what it is. I don't want to tell them I want this for Christmas, because where's the joy in that? My joy is complete when they think about it and give me something because they're sharing their love with me. My joy is complete when I give them something because I'm sharing my love with them. And that's what this parable is all about. Living in such a way that we know we are loved. And we don't have to do things to earn love. That's not love. We don't buy love. We are loved. And we give away that love because we know it. So in Jesus, who is our Christ, hear these words one more time. Beloved, we are God's children. And Jesus, our beloved, opens the door to us. Through Jesus, we are forgiven. By Jesus, we are welcome. In Jesus, we are called to rejoice. Let us live in the promises prepared for us from the foundation of the world. And the people of God say, Amen.
Today's Monday message begins with Matthew chapter 25, verse 31. By faith we are in the presence of the Son of Man who comes in his glory, and all the angels with him. Then he will sit on the throne of his glory. Our author writes, the conclusion of the liturgical year is called the Reign of Christ, or formerly Christ the King Sunday. In a sense, we are to read this final passage for the year from Matthew as God's last word to us about the way God would have us live as his disciples. What a spectacular vision! Jesus, the Son of Man, is absolutely the Lord of Lords, King of Kings of all time. Then, with royal prerogative, he separates the throng into clusters of sheep or goats. Surprise! Whatever you did in your earthly lifetime matters to Jesus. And his separation of the righteous from the unrighteous is a warning to us. Are you a sheep or a goat? Jesus cares about how we live our lives and the way we regard other persons and his creation. He has set the example of godly faithfulness by noticing those who are huddling on the margins of society, those who have no power or privilege, and those who are usually overlooked or considered not worth noticing. For that cohort of community, Jesus reached out with life-saving help and welcome. He heals those with incurable conditions, touches those with no name or lineage, and speaks with women, children, and the crippled. The goats and sheep did not know that their response of the least of these was the same as responding to Jesus. Sheep cared, and goats did not. Whatever they did in ordinary dealings with God's beloved was done as if to Jesus himself. Because Jesus has claimed us as his own through the water and the word at our baptism, we don't have to redeem ourselves, nor can we do so. God has transformed us into sheep. Jesus invites us to continually act as he did and does, caring especially for the least of these. Have you made your holiday shopping list? How about considering donations to ELCA Good Gifts or Lutheran World Relief to fulfill your sheepiness? Look and listen for those who are ignored, forgotten, or dismissed as unimportant. Jesus will meet you as you care for them. P.S. I am fond of the gift of goats, who find their own food, give milk, are easy to manage, provide meat and leather upon their demise, and whose hides make the best heads for drums. Let us pray. Glorious Lord, reign in our hearts so that we share your redeeming reign with all the world. Amen. This Monday message was contributed by Christ Lutheran Church member Peggy Ogden Howe.